Thanks for walking us through that. Yeah, I mean, diversification is never a bad idea. I'll go over now to where your capital is going at the moment. One company that I think more recently you've been speaking on is, and we've had on the show actually, is Astra Exploration. You recently topped up your stake in the company. Now, the market, though, broadly sometimes can have a bias against certain jurisdictions, be it Chile or Argentina, different areas of the world, and really bucket them maybe unfairly for geopolitical or bureaucratic type items. What's your thesis on Astra, and how are you looking at their geological footprint?
So Astra ticked a lot of boxes for me. So, one thing I look for, I'll take a step back. One thing I look for when I buy a share of a junior mining company, there's three things they have to have. So they have to have a really, really strong scientific geological technical team, because you don't want Michael Gentile spotting your drill holes or deciding where to allocate capital with the drill bit. That's going to be a disaster. So you have a really credible geological team, and importantly, a geological team that is focused on finding a mine. So the problem with a lot of geologists, and I love geologists, a lot of them are my friends, I'm invested with them, a lot of them, is that they love drilling. They love rocks as much as I love stocks. So they just love drilling and learning about geology. But I'm like, I love rocks, but I like making money more. And so can we focus our drilling on really projects we really think are going to be a mine? And if you're getting some drill results early on that tell you there's not enough scale here, not enough grade, not enough volume to actually make a mine, let's move on. Let's save our shareholders money and move on somewhere else. And so I like geologists that are really good at finding mines and are really good with shareholders' money. Second thing you need is people like myself on the board or as insiders, strategic investors that understand how to build a business. So how to make money, how to raise money, how to get the right shareholders, when to do M&A, when to not do M&A, when to not raise money, when to cut your costs, et cetera, different parts of the cycles. Really sound financial business advice to combine that geological talent with the financial knowledge to make a successful business. And the third piece you need is insider ownership, because too many junior mining companies are not owned by their, I'm not talking about free stock that they got, penny paper or cheap stock they got just to show up and be a manager, but actually real checks in the business so that they're thinking like owners. And so Astra has the VP geology, Diego, is a brilliant geologist. He's a PhD, teaches at the Argentinian Mining School in Buenos Aires. Brian Miller, the CEO, is not a geologist. He's a businessman. He's an entrepreneur who knows a lot about geology, but is thinking about shareholders all the time. And they have insider ownership, including myself, of like 25, 30%, including management that owns like 9 or 10%. And why does that matter is the project they're having a lot of success on, Argentina, La Manchuria, they acquired in the downturn, I think it was 2023, when the market was dead. There was no funding for juniors. Brian, Diego, and the whole team agreed to cut their salaries to zero during a 1 year period. Not I owe you money later or payables, but I'm not taking any money, working full time for the company, preserving the cash, because they knew that if they had cash and nobody else had cash in a downturn, you can buy assets at penny on the dollar. So they avoided diluting themselves, and they had enough cash to go and buy La Manchuria, which is now their flagship project in Argentina, for a very low price when the market was depressed. And they only got it because they had the wherewithal to stay. That's thinking like an owner. A renter thinks about, how can I pay my salary? How can I make sure my bonus is paid this year? Give me some stock options. So they think like owners. And Diego, the geologist, had coveted this asset for 20 years. He saw it as a young geologist and dreamed about owning this asset, but it was a very tricky asset to buy from a private family. And Brian was able to get that out. So the strong geological talent, the ownership of management, the dedication of management, and then the ability to wherewithal financially to do it. And that asset today is now proving to be something that is really exciting. The market cap's gone from like 5 million to 100 million, but I think they're just scratching the surface of the geological potential of this asset, all because those three factors, I think, lined up beautifully the story to allow it to be successful.
That's great, and yeah, I want to go back to a point you made on the ownership too. It's easy for a presentation to say that a company has 40% management ownership, but if a lot of those shares were bought at a tenth of a penny, then what real skin do they have in the game? So I think note well taken on that, and certainly they have it at Astra. Um, Looking a little bit more at them and La Manchuria, which is the flagship. They recently wrapped up their phase 2 program. They've had some great results, 199 grams of gold and 228 grams of silver over zero point 0.6 meters. And then they've had other ones that have been higher or longer intervals as well. I guess, what are your thoughts on how that's playing out, and on upcoming drilling as it goes to their thesis? I know they're kind of going towards two systems, or two angles, if you will.
So I think not being a geologist actually is a big advantage to me, Daniel, because, I think a lot of money is destroyed in this sector when companies don't understand the geology. And the faster you can understand the geology, the structural geology of the deposit, what's feeding it, what's informing it, the more efficient your drill programs are going to be. And so what I really loved about Astra is when they brought me this opportunity, they told me, we're going to buy La Manchuria, we help us fund it. I asked, okay, what's the geological theory? Because it was an asset that had been previously drilled in the past. And so when you have previously drilled asset, you go, why did the guy leave? Why did they build a mine here? What caused them to walk away? And Diego had been on this asset 20 years ago, dreamed about owning it. The previous owners, if there's a great slide in their deck, your viewers can go look it up. It's a form of a tree. So think about a big trunk of a tree, and then you have the big branches. You have the small little twigs that go out to hold the leaves. And so the previous owner had only drilled to about 50 meters deep. And think about they're only drilling the little twigs, the skinny little twigs that hold a leaf on the tree. And they drilled that out, some great results. And they had a shallow resource, about 300,000 ounces at a good grade. But the previous owner thought that's all there was. Project that down the road that had more scale, they're going to go build that. They'll come back to this one day. Diego, the brilliance of Diego was that he reinterpreted the geology, spent months looking at the core, analyzing the project, said, no, those little twigs are just the first expression of the branches and then the bigger trunk below. And there's a feeder system for this. And there's a deposit in the area that has 10 million ounces owned by Newmont that has the exact same geology. And so Diego said, here's what we got to do. We got to drill a little deeper and prove that all these little twigs or little branches are convalescing at the depth, coming into a wider, thicker formation. And so they started drilling, and they started seeing, as they got a little bit deeper, not even deep at all, like 100 meters, 150 meters deep, they started seeing the geological model working. And he also said that they had missed the fact that part of this shallower deposit was cut off through some faulting, and that actually extended for much longer strike lengths and also parallel structures they never discovered before. So your small little twigs actually had a much bigger footprint. So the size of the prize was maybe 1 million, 2 million ounces, really shallow at surface, but the real elephant was the deeper targets below. And so with very low amount of drilling, Diego rapidly proved that his theory was correct. And that's the companies I love to find, where the model makes sense, you got good control. That means your hit rate's going to be up. I think almost every single hole they've drilled since acquiring this project has hit mineralization. It's also a very good indicator that you understand the geology. And now they just raised, I think it's $15 million on the last financing. Now they're fully funded to start drilling some of these deeper, not even that deep, 300 meter, 400 meter deep holes to test that convergence theory. Is there a big elephant below? Can you hit the trunk of the tree? If you hit the trunk of the tree, this thing suddenly becomes a billion-dollar potential market cap story. So great team, great use of capital, great understanding of the geology. And now for the first time, the company's really financed for a very large and aggressive drill program. And like you mentioned earlier, very exciting grades in a part of Argentina that's already very developed. So infrastructure in place, roads, power, existing mines, that dramatically lowers your cost versus being in the Andes somewhere where it costs $1,500 to drill a meter. Low drill costs, lots of services available there. Great place to build a mine. And early indications that they have something that's much bigger than the market previously believed.
Yeah, and I think it raises a good point, because when I was kind of first into the space, it would be easy to look at a project and if a company had it and you've seen that it been drilled before, to think like, oh, well, they're just re-drilling, there's nothing there. But if the approach isn't right, and they're just, or if the wrong approach wasn't right, before, and they do it differently, then that's a whole different animal. So
very important question to ask when you're looking at a project is what went wrong in the past? What's different this time? Unfortunately, in this business, Dan, there's a lot of bad operators that will come in and drill twin holes or parallel holes to existing deposits that have already proven not to have the legs to be an actual economic mine, but they're just trying to get some flashy results to raise money and pay their salaries or worse, And so you always got to ask yourself, that's what Diego says. Okay, this thing was basically abandoned by the previous operator. What did they miss? And then Diego had the 10-point geological model is here's what they missed. Here's what we're going to drill. What I also love about that model is that you can prove it very quickly. I'm like, okay, Brian, here's $1 million. Drill me 2,000 meters and prove you're right. And then if you're right, we'll give you more. If you're wrong, we move on. We only lost $1 million on drilling. So those are the kind of yes or no questions I like to ask, and not enough investors look at that. You can't buy these stories, at least what I'm doing over 5, 10 years, just for drill results. You got to buy something that's actually going to turn into a mine or turn into a real economic project. And so that's why I really zero in on those key questions.
Um, so you talked a little bit about some of the things that I guess that you saw in Brian and the team, but when you sit down to speak with a new CEO, be it Brian or be it the CEO at Northern Superior, what are some of the non-negotiable traits that you look for? What are some, maybe some flags where you might just walk away entirely?
So integrity is everything in this business. So if I don't sense they're a man or woman of integrity and of their word, and they're going to treat shareholders with the utmost respect, I'll walk away. You mentioned the cap table. Without even meeting them, if I look at a cap table, I can tell you 9 times out of 10 how much respect they have for shareholders. Looking at the kind of financings they've done, the founder shares they've got, just in general, like how they've raised their money from who, that's a good indication. I'm also my first mentor in the business, my first job. He's now deceased, but he was a great influence on me. He always told me he wants to be the least smart guy in the room. So he loved to surround himself with people that are way smarter than him. And if you're going to invest in the commodity space and you're not a geologist, you want to surround yourself with people that are way smarter than you. So I always vet or double check every single geological theory they sent to me, or their mine plans or PEAs or PFS, with the professional friends and partners that I have in the business that can de-risk the asset for me. And on the personal side, I will rarely, almost never invest in a company if I don't know somebody that I trust that knows management or a key shareholder on the board. So Brian will tell you, he tells a story often at Astra. He came to me and they were a private company. And I thought the company was interesting. I liked the approach that they had, but I didn't know anybody that knew the guys at Astra. And so I waited. And then over time, as my network expanded and grew in the business, I was able to make a bunch of connections that knew these guys, and they de-risked the investment for me. And so when they were a public company, I ended up writing a check very early on in the process. So just de-risking the quality of the people through others is really important as well. So those are non-negotiables. And then the asset, you can always change the asset to upgrade the asset of a company. If you've got a good team with the right attitude, the right thought for shareholders, you can like Astra is a big success today. It's going to be a much bigger success in the future. They didn't own that asset when I made my first investment, right? But they had the right people, the right opportunity, the right skill set to turn a B asset to an A plus asset through acquisitions. And so that's really what they've been able to do.